Hi, and welcome to the Soulful Living podcast with me, Georgia Pitfield, the Soulful Living Coach. This podcast is dedicated to reclaiming our true identities and rediscovering who we were before the world got in the way. Join me each week as we journey together to strip back the layers of societal conditioning, reconnect with our soul, and come home to the self. Hi everyone, welcome back to episode 10 of Soulful Living with me, Georgia Pitfield. This week, I'm joined by Sarah Gale, nutritionist and hormone expert, who is here to tell us how we can live in true alignment by honouring and syncing our hormone cycles. Sarah is based in Guernsey, but delivers one-to-one nutrition consultations online with clients around the world, helping women to balance their hormones and nourish their bodies. So without further ado, hello, Sarah.
Hi, thanks for having me on.
Oh, I'm so excited. How are you?
All good. Yeah, all good here. It's a little bit of a rainy June day, but not too bad. How about you?
Yeah, I mean, Ireland's forgotten about summer. I feel like every episode I'm talking about the weather. I'm either like, it's sunny today, so I'm happy, or it's raining. I don't know what's happened. It's like literally torrential rain for the last 4 days. So
no.
This is it. I was like looking at visas to go and live in Portugal or something. I was like, I gotta go. I can't do this.
I don't blame you at all. Where's the sun?
Yeah, I know, I literally need it. I'm desperate. But anyway, yeah, hopefully it'll arrive one day. But anyway, I'm so excited to speak to you today. Obviously, we worked a little bit together last year, and when I kind of was on my I'd been a vegetarian for about a year, but was definitely just eating corn nuggets and cheese and nothing of nutritional value. So I enlisted your help to obviously help me with food plans, which was super amazing. I literally still cook the same meals now. Yeah, loved working with you like that. And I know you do a load of work, in terms of hormone syncing, which is brand new to me, and I'm super excited to get stuck into it today. But before we begin, would you mind just telling us a little bit about yourself, how you became to be a nutritionist and a hormone expert?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thanks again for having me on. So my nutrition journey really started when I was about 18, 19, that I wasn't ill enough to be diagnosed with anything or in hospital, but I felt awful. I had chronic nausea every day. I had really bad headaches and migraines, no energy. I was sleeping so much. I had acne, digestive problems. I was overweight. My periods were a mess. I really did not feel like a thriving 18-year-old, let's say, ready to go to university. I felt awful. And like anyone, you go to your GP, and they were very good in terms of listening to me, and they ran lots of different tests to find out what was wrong. But all of my blood tests I went back several times actually, but all my blood tests came back as normal. And I was starting to think, is this all in my head? Is it all me? Yeah. And I went through that cycle of going to them, everything was normal, and then thinking, oh, maybe it's me, but no, I'm really not me. And then one day I came across a nutritionist. I was just going on Google and Googling all of my symptoms and was just going, what's wrong with me? And I came across a nutritionist that spoke about the root cause of healing, and actually looking at not just maybe you have a symptom and you treat that, but actually the underlying mechanisms that might be contributing to some of these symptoms. Yeah. And she actually had on her website something like, just because your blood tests are normal doesn't mean you're well, or something like that. Yeah. And it really just spoke to that feeling that I've had, that it's not all in my head. So of course I signed up to work with her, and that really just sparked me on my journey, that I started working one-to-one with her, and we made some very, very simple changes. It wasn't anything difficult. And within a couple of weeks, I felt like a different person. My nausea had lessened. I had far more energy. My acne was reducing. It was really quite amazing how quickly the changes happened. And that really just sparked me on my journey to thinking, I need to do this, I need to train. And I didn't necessarily train with the view of helping people back then. It was really just because I was so fascinated at how what you put in your body could have such an impact, both negatively and positively, that I thought, this is what I need to train in, even if I just use the knowledge for me. So that was, I guess, my first step into nutrition. And the wanting to look at hormones and specialize in hormones came a little bit later, actually. So that was, whilst I was qualifying, I continued working on my health, and I got better and better, and got to a point where actually I was pretty much symptom free and everything was good. But up to the point of my last exams in my last year, and then the pressure of launching a business, I was so stressed. I was also working full time at the time. So trying to study for a degree, launch a business, and also working in a full-time job. I was just so stressed. I was pushing myself. And I also had underlying, I guess, fears of being seen. That body image had been an issue for me for pretty much the whole of my life. And then suddenly I was trying to launch this business that I was at the center of it. So there was just so much stress coming out. And it was actually after qualifying that I was diagnosed with Hashimoto's thyroiditis, which is an autoimmune thyroid condition, and PCOS, which is polycystic ovarian syndrome. So two conditions which are very much hormone driven. And all of my health issues came back. And I remember barely being able to get out of bed. I had so many naps. I had brain fog. I couldn't really string a sentence together. My health really just declined that year after qualifying. And I remember feeling not only physically awful, but like a fraud, really, that I've done all this training into nutritionist, yet I'm still in bed. I'm still exhausted. And how can I possibly be this ambassador for health? And that is why I guess I look back now and I think that's the best thing that could have happened to me. Because firstly, I understood what it feels like when your hormones are working against you and fighting against you and how awful you can feel. But secondly, it also gave me a really good stopping point in my journey to actually think that I have all this nutrition knowledge, and I was convinced I was applying it to myself. But I obviously wasn't, because I ended up in this situation. So it gave me a really good, I guess, stopping point and pausing point to really examine how I was living my life and actually realize that I wasn't connecting with my body at all. I knew all of this nutrition knowledge, yet I wasn't applying it and I wasn't listening with my body. And it's really since then, that is when I've got far more into hormonal health and living in tune with your body. And actually that was how I healed myself, I guess, the second time, was starting to listen to what my body needed. It didn't need getting up at 5 o'clock and working until 9 o'clock at night, pushing and hustling. It needed nourishment and a hot bath often, other than answering a million emails. So that is how I first got into nutrition. And then I guess it evolved into a deeper understanding of hormonal health and actually being in tune with your body.
And that's it, isn't it? We live in the society of the quick fix. So, and even when you mentioned the blood tests, like I know a number of women who are constantly going for blood tests, trying to see, what's wrong. And I was even the same recently. I went for a number of blood tests and I was like, oh, you know what? I can't wait to get the results because it's finally going to explain, what's wrong with me or why I've been feeling like this. Well, they all came back completely normal. The nurse was like, great, this one's great. Yeah, brilliant. Like they were like very good on, obviously I don't understand what the results of the blood test mean, but the nurse was like, yep, everything's perfect.
Normal. And
I was like, what? Are you joking? Like, what do you mean everything's perfect? And I was like, am I just lazy? Like, am I just like a lazy person that I feel like this? Like, what's wrong with me? Like, clearly everything's fine. But we do live in that society of a quick fix and also wanting a test to tell us, this is what's wrong with you, and not listening. Actually, it's not that there's anything necessarily wrong. It's that our body is trying to tell us it wants us to do something differently, to be more in alignment. And, we haven't grown up to know that, have we? In the Western world and the country we live in, over here, we don't really know that unless you had perhaps parents who are very holistic and into, different kind of medicine. I already know that there's going to be so many women listening to this, me included, who completely resonate. And it's actually really nice to know that there is a different route. It doesn't need to be going to a GP and blood tests and having, Western medicine tell you there is or isn't something wrong with you. Actually, you can do this in a different way. Which is really inspiring, I think, for a lot of people. So what have you learned about your body on this journey and kind of the idea of it being in alignment? What are some of the key learnings that you found from kind of applying it to yourself?
I think the biggest thing I've learned is that we are all unique, but I need a lot of rest. That I was very much brought up in, you have to work hard to do well. So whether that's in your exams, whether that's in your career, whether that's in your relationships, you have to sort of push and hustle and constantly be doing. And that is very much what I did throughout my studying, what I did when I launched my business. I was pushing, I was hustling, I was working hard, and I ended up being exhausted. And I think that is the biggest thing that I've learned, is that actually the more that I rest and the more that I tune into what my body needs, of course, sometimes I have the energy to go, and that's amazing. And I really thrive off that energy.
Yeah.
But when I wake up and I feel like actually now I need to go for a walk instead of doing 2 hours of emails, it is that understanding of what my body needs. And for me, it's a lot of rest. That actually, if I look at my schedule, it took a long understanding of kind of really stripping back my schedule. And that was a really big fear for me, that I'm a doer, really. That's always what I've been doing. So then looking at a schedule that was very much stripped back, because when I'm well rested, that is when I'm more creative, I'm better with my clients, my brain works better, I feel better in myself. So I think that's my biggest learning, really, is rest. And as I say, we're all unique, but I have to say, working with my clients, that's a really big learning that I see for a lot of my clients, is that I liked what you said before about actually, if you have a symptom, it's almost the body trying to tell you something. It's not that actually we need to go to the doctor and have a medication to deal with that. Of course, sometimes, that is the right route. But actually, it is the body showing us something's out of alignment, and listening into that and then doing something about it is the best, in my opinion, is the best way to deal with that. And I think as a society, we like that quick fix. We want to just kind of ignore it, take a pain relief, carry on with our day and get on with it, rather than thinking, maybe I have a headache because I've been looking at my screen too long, or maybe I have a headache because I'm really, really stressed. So I think it's listening to that body. And I think the whole stress piece and rest piece, I see a lot with my clients. I do a lot of work around, actually, are they overworking themselves? And I think as a society, generally, I would say we are.
Yeah, definitely. And I think what you've said there, about the fact that we look for a quick fix, and especially as women, and I know this is a very hot topic at the moment in terms of contraception, kind of is, definitely the quick fix for a lot of symptoms. And this will bring us on to hormone syncing, and I'd love for you to explain a little bit further, exactly what this means, because as women especially, we have obviously different hormones throughout the month. We have different phases of our cycle, and the majority of women I know, and me personally, just wanted to kind of mask the hormones, plaster over it, don't really want to acknowledge them or work with them, kind of want to pretend they don't exist because they're a little bit challenging or difficult. And it makes us confused because, at school and, in the society that we were brought up in, there wasn't really encouragement to work with hormones and know, how to work with them in the best way for you. It was really about forgetting about them and pushing through. So I'd love to dig into hormone syncing and really understand from you, what is this?
Absolutely. And I really wish this was a part of the core curriculum, actually, that I was thinking back to what I learned at school. And I've also spoken to some of my friends who have sort of daughters that are going through that time. And it's really, we're taught about safe sex, and we talk about what periods are and they happen, but there is really no other consideration beyond that. We're not talking about actually what happens with our hormones, which I'll talk about here. And I just think it's such a crucial part of being a woman that it's just really overlooked. And as you say, almost just pushed down by society. Like, women we menstruate, but let's just take a pill and then let's just squash that because we don't need to have those periods. It's fine.
Forget about it.
Absolutely. And I guess just for some women, that actually, if their periods are very, very heavy or very, very painful, actually for them to be able to function, then yes, maybe contraception is required. But going back to that feeling or thought that actually the body is trying to tell you something, that actually that symptom is because it's out of alignment, that I think contraception is a personal preference, and it always should be. But I think my concern comes is when, this happened to me, that I had really heavy and painful periods. I went to my GP and I was given the contraception. There was no discussion of anything else they could do. Here's the contraception, take it, and there you go. And I know so many friends and so many clients are on the same boat, rather than actually looking at the underlying, maybe what's going on with that menstrual cycle, to actually help then use diet and lifestyle, I guess, to support that. So I went off tangent a little bit there, but let me come back to actually what happens. So if you are menstruating, whether that's around, let's take a 28-day cycle, because that is kind of standard. It doesn't mean that it can't be 25 days, or even up sort of 32, 34 days to be a normal cycle. But that kind of 28-day cycle is what's used as a textbook example. Is that if we kind of split the hormone cycle into two halves, and I'll try not get too sciencey here, because without graphs and things, like, you might lose me. So in the first half of the cycle, we have estrogen, and estrogen is the dominant hormone there. And actually what that is working to do is it's working to bring our hormones and body in alignment for ovulation. So when that egg is ready, egg is released, ready to be fertilized. So estrogen is actually going to help improve our energy. It actually makes us more attractive. And this isn't actually just me making this up. This is scientific research that actually it makes us more attractive, because your body, whether you want to get pregnant or not, is trying to get you pregnant each month. So actually that boost in estrogen making you more attractive is its way of actually hoping that you are going to get pregnant.
The animal instincts, isn't it?
Absolutely. Yeah, I mean, as much as we can kind of our society has changed, the animal instincts are really there in our body still. So we have that estrogen throughout the first half of our cycle, so can improve our attractiveness, improve our confidence, improve our energy, and we probably notice a lift in mood as well. So that's really kind of the menstrual cycle can be likened to the seasons, actually. So we often say, like, the first half of the cycle is like spring, and then up to ovulation, which is mid-cycle, is like summer. So if you imagine like the energy in spring and summer, it's quite light and playful and a bit flirty, and that's kind of what's happening in the first half of the cycle. And then the second half of the cycle, we have progesterone taking over. And that is a lot sort of calmer energy. So I guess estrogen is exciting play. Progesterone is a lot sort of that calmer energy. So that is likened to then autumn. And then when we do have our period, that's then winter. So we go through those nice fluctuations, and the hormones are actually programming the body to do different jobs in the body. So in terms of the uterine lining, estrogen is building it up, progesterone is thinning that, ready for your period, but they are working with everything in your body. So for example, like estrogen lifts your mood, progesterone gives you a calmer mood. That we often think about our hormones in terms of what is happening around our period, but they are affecting everything in our body, whether that's our thoughts, whether that's our temperature, whether that's our mood, our digestion. They really play a factor in everything. So that is that's a very, very brief overview, I guess, of what's happening. But I really like the analogy of those seasons, because we can kind of imagine it. That I know for me is, spring and summer definitely is playful energy. Autumn is when you start to be a little bit more reserved, and maybe you're cuddling up with a good book. And then winter is when you're really hibernating and don't want to see anybody. So that is kind of what's happening on a monthly basis. And without that monthly fluctuation, actually, if you are on not all birth contraception, but most of the contraception, they're going to blunt that. So actually you're not going to get the natural fluctuation, as in you probably won't notice a lift in your energy sort of day 8 to 15, and then a drop in your energy from just before your period. Because actually the hormones are being blunted by the birth contraception. That's how they work. And that's not necessarily, it's a personal choice. It's not necessarily a bad thing, but we are then losing what our body is designed to do. We're actually blunting the ability to listen to what's happening in our body, if that makes sense.
Yeah, definitely. And I love that idea of the seasons, because first it's just really nice, and it reminds us, we are cyclical beings, and, we are in tune with Mother Earth and nature, and we forget that, I think, sometimes in this society that we live in. And also that is the easiest example. Like, if they just showed us that at school, like, women would understand it so much more. And, I think, when we have contraception or whatever it is, or, some of the hormones which are a bit more uncomfortable, PMS, and we're feeling stressed and, a bit more emotional, the desire is to mask that, I guess, but then we're losing all the lovely stuff too. Like, I want to be spring and summer and flirty and attractive and fun.
Absolutely. I think that's a really good point, that if you have really severe symptoms, then because not everybody gets the opportunity to, I guess, press pause on life and whilst they work on these symptoms. So actually birth contraception can be useful for that. But if you do have some space to actually work on these symptoms and lessen those symptoms so it doesn't become so unmanageable, as you say, you get all of the wonderful benefits. For me, I love that spring summer energy. I probably comes across. I just love that it's just such a fun time, both in personally, professionally. Like, it's just a lovely energy that I really enjoy having. So it can be worth, if you are listening to this and thinking, I want some of that spring summer energy, then it could be worth actually exploring, if you are on contraception, whether that is necessarily right for you. Now, of course, it's a personal choice, but there are lots of ways you can do to support symptoms. So whether that's heavy painful periods, PMS, there's lots that diet and lifestyle can really, really support you through that.
Yeah, and that's something I'd love to come on to. And as we've mentioned, as a woman, our hormones are overlooked by society. We do typically live in a masculine world. Hormones, we're taught to kind of shut them out, mask over them. And we're also taught that we need to consistently show up. The corporate world, whatever kind of working world we're in, there is this, need to constantly be on. With hormones and the way women work, that's, our bodies don't want to constantly be on, it wants to have that autumn and winter phase too. So even though our hormones are constantly fluctuating, there is this kind of underlying need that we need to show up. So how do you think we can reconnect with the hormones we experience to work with them to our advantage rather than denying them and wanting to block them out?
Yeah. Oh, I love that. So I think the first step to really doing that is tracking your cycle, actually, to understand for you, what does your cycle look like? And there's loads of different apps to help with that actually you can program in when your period is and different symptoms, etc., to really understand what your cycle looks like for you. Because maybe if you're starting out right now, everything is kind of flat. But that's kind of okay. The first part of this is to really tune in with what you are feeling in each part of your cycle, really, and to understand how long your cycles are, how long your periods are, where maybe you do need a little bit more support. And then I think it's, once you kind of track your cycle and you understand what that looks like, I think it's definitely key. I mean, you'll know when your period is, but it also can be quite nice to know when ovulation is as well, to kind of get that midpoint. So if you are starting to track your cycle, you might not get that boost in energy. I certainly didn't until I really started tuning into my body. And now I have a lovely, lovely increase. But that is because I really do listen to my body in the second half and rest. So you can track your ovulation. You can use ovulation strips. You can use your temperature. You can also use your cervical fluid. So it would change. So it would go to more like a raw egg white consistency. So there's lots of different ways you can track your ovulation. You can also do it kind of roughly, but it is kind of nice to know. So at least you can then start working a little bit with your cycle, even if you aren't necessarily getting all the feelings right now, you can have that. So I would say in the first half of your cycle, after your period ends, you can then start, maybe that is when you can get that lovely lift in energy, and that's when you have a capacity to do more. So maybe that is when actually you have more capacity to exercise, you can work longer hours, you can play more, you can maybe live how you're currently living. I say most of my clients are living always in their spring cycle without necessarily considering that they need rest in the second half. So I probably really focus on, I mean, if you are really in tune with your body, then actually doing more high intensity exercise during this time. It's a really good time for actually sort of planning and thinking about what you want to do. So really scheduling all of those tasks. It is a really nice time, I guess, in that go mode. That is what you want to be focusing on that spring and summer. And then after that ovulation point ends, that is when you actually want to be conserving energy. So autumn and winter. That is when you want to be more conservative with your exercise. So actually maybe doing more lower key forms of exercise, maybe walking, swimming, yoga, not those really high intense exercise classes. Maybe you want to be scheduling more rest. Maybe you want to be doing more activities that aren't group orientated because you don't have that sociability aspect. You do want to be a little bit more withdrawn. I really think about in autumn and winter, I do have that hibernation feeling in me, and it is thinking about actually, can you schedule some alone time and those tasks that don't require so much I guess other interaction from other people, really. So scheduling more downtime, scheduling more rest, lower intensity exercise, as well as really focusing on lots of nourishing food. So I think around, again, like autumn and winter, we often think about soups and stews and those really sort of hearty, nourishing meals. And if we are in the season summer, like June, July, August, then you might not be having a hot stew, but actually thinking about what is a really, really hearty meal. So things like actually porridge for breakfast for me is a really hearty meal. Maybe it's like a bean casserole, those types of things. So that second half of your phase, really sort of hearty, supportive, nourishing meals that you'd associate maybe with more autumn and winter.
Yeah. And that leads me exactly where I want to come on to next, because, okay, so when I think of winter and cozying up, I literally think of a massive bar of dairy milk and a cup of tea. Like, I'm so bad. I have like such a sweet tooth. And if I had my own way and never gained weight, I would probably eat junk all the time. It's bad. But, in addition to obviously moods, we do notice different cravings during our cycle as well. And again, the general consensus from society is just to push through and just, if you've got strict meal plans, stick to it, don't change it because of your cycle, or like me, turn to sugar, comfort food, in the context of a big chocolate cake or chocolate bar, to try and help. But really, what does our body need during these phases? What are some things that actually will really improve us rather than just being, a quick fix?
Absolutely. Yeah. So most people notice those cravings the week before their period. If they are very, very intense, often it can be. So we have that progesterone that's dominant in the second half of the cycle, but it will start to drop just before your period starts. And estrogen, so that is dropping in the second half. We get a little lift and a little drop. And it is in that little lift and drop, so just the week before, the drop in both those hormones that can often cause more cravings. So it can be listening to your body. So actually asking yourself, what do you actually need? So do you need that great big bar of dairy milk, or do you need a lovely hot bath or a lovely massage? What do you actually need? Because that can be quite useful, that sometimes we think we very much need sugar, especially if it's sort of a habit, but actually maybe we need something else. So firstly, asking yourself, do you need it? It can also be a sign, so those really intense cravings, of a lack of magnesium. So magnesium is really important to support those hormones, as well as support your blood sugar balance, which can contribute to some of those cravings, as well as actually just lessen those cravings. So magnesium is found really heavily in dark leafy greens. So whether it's like your spinach, your kale, your collard greens, any dark leafy green, pumpkin seeds are actually also a really lovely source of magnesium. So if you do notice the really intense cravings that week before your period, then actually upping your magnesium throughout the whole of your cycle, not necessarily that week, can really help support that. So whether I would try to do diet first, it can also be why you crave chocolate as well. So chocolate is rich in magnesium. So if you have a really intense chocolate craving, it could be that you are deficient in magnesium. So instead of going for that Cadbury or dairy milk, which is going to be very laden with sugar, then actually maybe going for a dark chocolate, so going for like a 70% plus cacao content, you're going to be getting some magnesium. You're going to satisfy a little bit of that craving, and give you a little bit of, I guess, soul food is what I call it, because it is comforting, right? A little bit of chocolate. Definitely a chocolate fan myself. So you can have some dark chocolate, dark leafy greens. Epsom salts are also a really lovely source of magnesium. So again, maybe that hot bath is what you need. Add some Epsom salts, really rich in magnesium. Or you can take a supplement if you do think that that's the best way to support you. But I do like to try with diet and lifestyle first to see actually does that really support the cravings. So that, I think that is kind of the main sign often, is a deficiency in magnesium. I would be trying that first to see if actually does that help lessen the cravings, and ask yourself, what do you actually need? Because often we don't need sugar, we need something else, we're missing something, and we turn to those foods emotionally to support us. So ask yourself what you need and see if you can up some magnesium to help with those cravings.
Yeah, amazing. And for women, especially who experience, really difficult cramping, find it really difficult. And, this is one of the reasons I went on contraception. I used to faint from the pain of my cramps because it was so bad.
Wow.
And I have the coil at the moment, and it's coming out later this year. And I actually have developed, although I'm actually excited the more I talk about it, to be able to start, understanding my body more and, planning and aligned with my cycle. But I mean, I've developed quite a big anxiety, even I feel it now talking about it, about the fact that these hormones won't be masked anymore, and it's going to just come at me like a ton of bricks.
Yes.
And so for anyone, in my position who is ready to come off contraception, they want to go back to their regular cycle, but they're scared about, the hormones, they're scared about the cramps, they don't really know how to deal with it anymore, because this is me. What would be some, I know, we're probably all different and different things affect it, but what are some things to really bear in mind? So you said, taking maybe magnesium, either, I guess, supplements or, foods that are rich in magnesium. What are some other suggestions you have that would really help with that?
Yeah, so I think anyone that is on birth control and wants to come off, so in your exact situation, and I fully get a lot of the anxiety, right? Because I mean, especially in your condition, that you fainted from the pain, right? That's not a little bit of pain, I need to take a bit of ibuprofen, I'll get on with it. That I really would encourage anyone who wants to come off contraception is to start working on helping and balancing their hormones now, even before you come off contraception. And that is really going to be that is going to be personalized what you need. But I would say generally an anti-inflammatory diet is going to support that. So actually that is going to be getting lots and lots of veggies in. So as much vegetables as possible. If you do consume meats, lots of sort of organic meats, organic eggs, it doesn't necessarily have to. If you are following a vegan or vegetarian diet, that's absolutely fine. Focus on getting those beans, pulses, nuts and seeds, organic tofu in there, and really lessening the processed foods as much as possible. So actually starting to read what you're putting in your body, that reading food labels, it can be quite surprising what is in there, that sugar is in everything. So trying to lessen that sugar as much as possible, because that can be inflammatory. Things like alcohol is not overly supported. Caffeine can be quite, I'm taking away all the fun here, aren't I?
I know. Whenever anyone says, try not having caffeine, I'm like, oh no, I'm obsessed with oat milk lattes. I'm like, I can't not have them.
I would say caffeine's kind of as long as you're having like good quality coffee, then actually that's kind of you can kind of leave caffeine. Caffeine's, I appreciate, we are very connected with caffeine, often more than sugar. So that's fine. But for some people, it really doesn't support them. It can be a little bit inflammatory. But I would definitely say sugar and alcohol is not supportive in that inflammatory response, and focusing on whole foods. So actually getting back in the kitchen. So cooking foods rather than relying on more processed foods. Cook your foods, because then you know exactly what's in there. So really focusing on, I guess, eat the rainbow is quite a nice way to encompass that anti-inflammatory overview. So if you think about plant-based foods, eat the rainbow. So eat as much color as possible, because it's that color in the food is actually anti-inflammatory properties. They are anti-inflammatory molecules. So really, I would say getting back to basics, dropping the processed foods is one of the best things you can do to actually help lessen inflammation, which can be a driver in painful periods in your case, but also just generally for supporting hormones. So that anti-inflammatory view can be really, really helpful. So get back in the kitchen, really, is my message there.
Amazing. Yeah, I love it. And another thing that we touched on earlier, which I really want to dig into as well, is, the reaction of the body does show us what's going on internally. People say the body speaks the language of the soul. If your body doesn't feel right, it is trying to tell you something. It wants you to pay attention to something. But as we mentioned, a lot of us either aren't aware of this, or we overlook this, or we're looking for a quick fix, or we just ignore it until it gets so bad that we just can't take it anymore. And we're often we're looking for over-the-counter or prescription medication rather than turning inwards and understanding the real cause of what is going on. And I think I noticed something on your Instagram the other day speaking to this, but what are some good examples of common conditions that we experience which indicate something deeper is going on? I think you might have used the example of acne on your post that you did.
Yes, quite probably.
So either going into acne or bloating or anything that's really common, that we all really face, but actually there's something deeper going on inside that we need to look at.
I really love that. And I would say I'll go into acne, because I think that's a common one, and actually one that we often think, oh, it's because of us, because we're not washing our face properly, or we need to buy other skincare. But actually, acne is really rooted internally in the body. And I would say that what I do with the way I work is I'm always looking at what is that underlying root cause. Because I would say any symptom in the body, any symptom really it's not to treat the symptom, it is to look at what the underlying root cause is. So whether that is rosacea, alopecia, whether that's heavy painful periods, whether that's bloating, whether that's fungal nails, that is that is exactly what I do, and the way I'm looking at it, that I'd say every symptom, I'm looking at what the root cause is. Because let's say a headache isn't a pain relief. You're not deficient in pain relief. It's either a lack of nutrients, it's an imbalance in your gut bacteria. So taking acne, actually, so we do think about that as a skin condition, and it is on the skin, right?
Yeah.
So we think about, we've got to apply something topical. Actually, our gut environment, so we have bacteria throughout the whole of our digestive tract, that it's become quite popular and well known that we have bacteria now in our large intestine. We see those little yogurt drinks, probiotics, things like that to feed the bacteria. We actually have bacteria throughout our whole of our digestive tracts. We also have bacteria on our skin, and we think about maybe bacteria in a negative sense, that we want to get rid of it, but actually we do have what's known as a microbiome. So that's a collection of bacteria, and we have a microbiome in our gut, and we have a microbiome on our skin, and also things in our lungs, in our vagina, in our nose. We have bacteria everywhere, and it's not necessarily negative, it's the balance of that environment. So I often use the analogy of a garden, that we want to be our microbiomes to be like a lovely mown lawn with lovely flowers and lovely bushes. And that's a really happy garden. But actually, if it gets overgrown or weeds overgrown, that is when maybe it's a negative microbiome. And if we have that overgrown garden in our guts, that can show up in the skin as well. And that can lead to lots of different skin conditions. So acne being one, it can be eczema as well, rosacea. So for example, if I have somebody with acne, I'm not asking, oh, you need to go and buy new moisturizer. I'm actually 9 times out of 10 looking at what's going on in their guts, and often they're like, oh yeah, I'm always bloated and I always have constipation as well. And I think, right, we need to really hone in the gut for you. So I think that's a really lovely example, actually, as I say, because a lot of people come to me going, I've tried every single product, I've been to dermatologists, I've tried every product, spent fortune, but actually it hasn't made any difference. And that is because if we have that, let's say for that person, we have an imbalance in that garden, in that bacteria in the gut, it doesn't matter what you put on your face, you're always going to have the same mechanism producing the acne for you. So really working on changing up that garden and mowing the lawn and encouraging the flowers to grow, that is when actually we're going to see that acne fade.
Yeah, gosh, wow, that is, I feel like when I talk about anything with anyone, you know, a nutritionist or anyone experienced in this field, everything always comes back to the gut, and you just don't, it's like everything is like, well, something's going on in the gut. And like, I guess for someone that's not in that field, it's like, what?
Yeah.
And like, I'm thinking back to, I can't remember how many years ago now, maybe 4 years ago or something, I was given medication for acne. But actually when I think back to that time, you know, I was dealing with really, really bad anxiety, which for me sits in my gut. You know, I was really nervous around food. I had to go on the FODMAP diet for a while. Like I was like, literally couldn't eat anything. And it's just, even until now, I hadn't actually made that connection. And now that you mention acne, I'm like, oh my gosh, that was obviously it. And then, you know, it cleared up by itself when I, you know, started eating better and, you know, working on my anxiety and things like that. Yeah, gosh, it's so interesting. Well,
I was just going to say, there's so much that comes back to the gut, like even like anxiety and mood disorders. We have that gut-brain connection that I find myself forever talking about the gut and forever working on the gut. And it's really big, hot topic of area of research that we know a little bit, but there's so much more to discover around the gut. And I agree that gut health is the hot topic right now. Everybody's talking about it. And so, it's a really amazing what can be achieved by working and supporting your gut.
Yeah. And it's just one thing again that I feel we forget is that everything is connected. You know, every part of the body is all connected to each other, and it's telling us different things about different parts of the body. You know, it's not separate. And also I love what you said, you know, if you have a headache, it's not because you're deficient in pain relief. You know, we look externally, and like even now I've got a bit of a headache and I'm like, oh, I've got a bit of a headache, don't it, like have to probably go take a paracetamol. And it's like, no, that's not, like, think about why you have it, you know. So it's just so interesting, and I actually really loved that that little term that you used. I'm gonna definitely use that.
I think I must have stolen that from somewhere, so I can't claim that, but I do love it. It's I say it to my clients and they go, oh yeah, it's not, is it? It's not a deficiency in this.
Like, that's so simple, isn't it? But
yes.
it's like, whoa, really?
Yeah.
Didn't think about that.
Yeah.
Yeah, gosh, wow, I have loved this conversation. Like, it's just, for me, as I mentioned, you know, I've got no background in nutrition or hormones or anything like that. It's not, you know, not something that I'm knowledgeable about. So for me, this, even personally, this conversation was just so interesting. Like, I almost went and made notes halfway through, but I was like, I can actually just listen back to this and make notes.
Oh, bless you.
I was like, so interesting. But yeah, I've absolutely loved it. And thank you so much for sharing your amazing wisdom with me.
You are so welcome, and thank you so much for having me on. It's been an absolute pleasure talking all things nutrition and hormones today. I've really enjoyed it, so thank you.
Amazing. Thanks, Sarah. Thank you for listening to the Soulful Living podcast with me, Georgia Pitfield, the Soulful Living Coach. If you liked what you heard, hit subscribe wherever you get your podcast to be the first to hear new episodes, and make sure to connect with me on Instagram at Georgia Pitfield.